Welcome to our February 10th edition of Saturday Simulcast, brought to you by the Union Club Hotel, Boiler Up Bar, 811 Bistro, and Leaps Coffee. It's going to be a happening place at the Union Club Hotel tonight for Purdue, Indiana. I'm sure it's going on all throughout the day as well. Big show today. I want to thank our guest, Brian Newbert, will join us in the first segment. Chad Q. Brown of ProfileBehavior.com. Very interesting guest that we've had on before, working closely with Matt Painter in the Purdue Athletic Department. And then, of course, Gene Keady and Troy Lewis will join us in the final segment as we get ready for a big night in Mackey Arena when Purdue takes on Indiana at 8 p.m. So have a great rest of the show, and we'll see you on the backside. Well, all right, Brian, we're going to open this segment like I said, it is always special when Purdue and Indiana play. And yet the Boilermakers, won by 21, I believe it was, in Assembly Hall. Indiana got my attention a little bit by beating Ohio State and coming back when they were left for dead. But do you see any scenarios where this game is a 35 to 40-minute game on Saturday night? I mean, what does Indiana have to do to stay in the game?
Yeah, I think that obviously things in rivalries can flip pretty quick and many things happen. On paper, it wouldn't look like that's really all that strong a possibility. I think the Indiana comeback against Ohio State was a double-edged sword because they also got down by 18.
Yeah.
What has been a very mediocre team this Big Ten season. And I think you probably want to point a finger at Ohio State as much as you want to credit Indiana for that. I'm not taking away from what they did. That was a great win for them under the circumstances and some measure of proof that they haven't packed it in for the season. But I think what you saw in Bloomington was one team that's just significantly better than the other one team that played significantly harder than the other one. And with this game being in Mackey Arena now, I wouldn't anticipate any of those things reversing themselves. I do think this is a Purdue team that takes some of these games personally, and I think there's a higher level of focus. There's a higher level of effort that comes out in games like this, and I think you'll see that on Saturday night. I think that if Indiana's going to have a chance, they're going to have an outlier shooting game. That's happened before. I don't know if it's ever happened in Mackey Arena. Jalen Hood-Schifino, they just couldn't cover him last year. He is long gone, much to Purdue's delight. Khalil Ware is banged up, but if he can make a bunch of threes, that's problematic for Purdue. Malik Reneau is always a difficult matchup on the block. Those are kind of the two guys that would concern me if I was Purdue. Trey Galloway getting hot like he did in Bloomington. I think that's kind of one of those situations where Assembly Hall takes guys to a higher level sometimes. Other than that, I just don't think Indiana's got the guard play to really be all of that problematic for Purdue. In the past, when Indiana has been the inferior team, they've had a Jalen Hood-Schifino who could really attack a weak spot in Purdue's defense. They've had a Xavier Johnson at times who could really make floaters over drop coverage and ball screen offense, things like that. I just don't think Indiana's got the guard play you have to really put 40 good offensive minutes up against Purdue. And that at the end of the day, you still have to outscore Purdue because they're really good offensively. And I don't know if if they're good enough defensively to hold Purdue to a reasonable number. So I would be surprised, but we've all been surprised before by outcomes in the Big Ten. We've all been surprised before by outcomes in Purdue, Indiana. So you never want to speak too soon, but on paper, this looks like a comfortable win for Purdue.
Jalen Hood-Schifino had 35 last year. Trey Galloway had 25 at Ohio State. It did shoot well, like you said. I think it was 17 in that first game. But it is going to take all Indiana can do, one would think, to get the job done. What do you make? Purdue has obviously, to some extent, run the gauntlet. It's not over, but it's sort of looking good for Purdue to pull its 26th Big Ten championship. Go to Wisconsin and tough out a game. They still just seem to have the edge of getting the job done. As Matt Painter said in his availability on Thursday, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't, but they still seem to have that extra gear to get the job done. And really, in the Wisconsin game, they were in control down the stretch. Most of these games, they've had a measure of wasn't over by any stretch, but they were still up 6 to 8 points down the stretch. Is that just the face of the best team in the Big Ten? Is that a sure sign of a team with another year of maturity? How do you put that together?
Yeah, I think it's been good for Purdue. After strain the last 3 games,
Yeah,
you know, they had to stave off Rutgers.
yeah,
They had to come back on Northwestern, and then on the road again, they had to stave off Wisconsin, who was arguably the best of those 3 teams. And Purdue did everything they needed to do to win. And I think Purdue is probably does have an extra gear sometimes that maybe isn't always being applied. And I guess opponents deserve credit for that. I'm not saying Purdue is coasting by any means,
no.
but you know, I think when their best comes out when they're pushed, that's a pretty good sign. And I think that's kind of happened here the last couple of games for Purdue. As I said before, I do think it's a good thing for them to not just be blowing through people. I do think the margin they have over the rest of the Big Ten in terms of how good they are is pretty significant. And but they are having their mettle tested. They are having their winning instincts, sharpened, so to speak. And I think it's a very good sign for them moving forward that they have been able to thrive in these really highly competitive situations. And I wouldn't expect otherwise from them. But I do think you're seeing some things in this team right now that represent progress from last season,
Yeah.
and it could have been predicted. Experience, maturity, all that stuff is cultivated over time. And when the guys with the ball in their hands, Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer now have that, I think that this was kind of the natural evolution of things. And I think this is what we talked about. I've talked about all season long that, in terms of championships and, March success and things like that, last year wasn't Purdue's shot. This year is Purdue's shot because their guards are all grown up now. They've got better depth than I think they did last season. Obviously, Lance Jones has been transformative. Zach Edey's improved. But the biggest piece of that puzzle has been Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer being older, more experienced, and just more mature as Big Ten basketball players. And I think that you've seen that come out here the last couple of games.
Yeah, no question that they have been outstanding, and for the most part, again, that it's been a 9-man rotation. Last against Wisconsin, you only have a couple. I think Gillis is the only one that scores any points off the bench. But this is a bench too that Cameron Heidi's made contributions. Certainly, Ethan Morton doesn't do a lot in the stat sheet, but he gets a lot of things done. Anything, is there anything that you see changing in that rotation as you go further? Caleb First probably is number 9 right now, the kind of the way things have gone from minutes played. Do you see any other tweaks to that, or do you think it's going to be a nine person roster all the way through? What do you see Matt Painter doing?
I think what you see right now is what you get the rest of the season. I mean, anything can happen. I think there might be situations competitively where he's got a little more flexibility because games are not as competitive as some of the ones that have been played before. And maybe that affords more minutes for Caleb First. Maybe that affords some minutes for Miles Colvin, things like that. Maybe that means more Lance Jones playing the point and less Braden Smith on the floor. I don't think Matt Painter views uh, things right now as in we have to curb people's minutes. I think he kind of views that as something that occurs during the week. I also think he has faith in Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer that they're in good enough shape now and conditioned well enough, both physically and mentally, to not hit the quote unquote wall they hit last season around this time. Um, so I think that right now this is what you're going to get. I think Mason Gillis is a critical player for this team, a sixth starter, one of the obvious candidates for Big Ten Six Man of the Year. There's a couple good ones, but he has been instrumental to this team's success. I think Ethan Morton's played well off the bench. I think Caleb Furst and Trey Kaufman-Renn, when in there together, have played pretty well together. I think it's important to a certain extent that Purdue be able to find some offense when Zach Edey's not on the floor, and I think Purdue's figured that out a little bit. So I think that, yeah, I just think the rotation you've seen here lately is kind of what's going to endure. And on top of the fact that you're winning, it's this deep into the season, and changing now wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense unless there was some urgent call or impetus in order to change. And obviously you want to keep rolling when you're rolling. So I don't think you're going to see anything overt in terms of Purdue changing. Now they're going to shorten their practices like they always do. They're going to, probably not have their best guys doing as much in between games. I would have to think, but I don't think they're gonna tweak anything in terms of what you see on game days.
You've talked about the transformative nature of Lance Jones, and written talked about how thought he was going to be a key player, but now he's really he is an all Big Ten level player. I'm not saying he's going to make a first team all Big Ten, but he has been that good, that confident, and made huge plays against Wisconsin to kind of help get Purdue over the hump. You spent a lot of time talking to Matt Painter about that as well, but just his role and what he looks to mean as Purdue gets to tournament time, because it seems to me he's got to give a coaching staff a lot of confidence that they've got an X factor that can really help them.
Well, at the very basic level, he has completed Purdue. I mean, he really has.
Yeah.
He's given them another on-ball defender, another ball handler. And it's so valuable in college basketball nowadays to have multiple ball handlers on the floor. He essentially allows Purdue to play 2 point guards, 3 if you consider Fletcher Lawyer as a guy who can be a primary ball handler. He just probably won't be ever in his career. He has given Purdue those 2 elements. He's given them a transition element that has really, really added another layer from an offensive productivity perspective, another layer as if they need any pressure on opposing defenses. One more thing to be aware of, as if Zach Edey wasn't enough of a problem, as if Braden Smith and ball screen offense isn't enough of a problem, as if all these 40% three-point shooters aren't enough of a problem. Now you have to be wary of Lance Jones just going end-to-end on you. What they've gotten from him as a scorer is just something that I don't think anyone could have seen coming. I think they were, I don't know if I was going to say this out loud at this point, but I think they really recruited him as an element guy and not necessarily a game changer. And what they've gotten has been a game changer. They needed a backup point guard. They needed a ball handler. They just needed an athlete, basically, in the backcourt. And they got that, but they also got a guy who's, the way I like to put it was Purdue returned a big 3 from last year's team in Zach Edey, Braden Smith, and Fletcher Lawyer. And Lance Jones has made it a big 4. And again, I keep saying this, if you could combine Trey Kaufman-Renn and Mason Gillis into one player, you'd basically have 5 all Big Ten starters. I think that's the level of productivity they're getting at every position. But you just can't say enough about what Lance Jones has done tangibly as a basketball player, but intangibly too. I mean, I just think his energy is just something that has really been a valuable commodity on this team. The joy he plays with has been a really, really valuable commodity on this team. I don't think this was ever really a thing, but this season could have been, a 6-month tension headache for Purdue, given all the expectations, given the undercurrent of how their season's ultimately going to be judged, and just having a guy out there who's just having the time of his life. I just think there's no other way to look at that other than that being just awesome for this team.
All right, the other guy that's having the time of his life, though quietly, stoically, just does it every game, is Zach Edey, and some of the narrative around him has been a little bit nutty on a national level, or at least in the social media sphere. But hard to put into perspective again just how good he's been. Yes, he gets fouled a lot. I don't know why people are surprised by that. It's because that's what he does, and that's what Purdue does. But talk just about him. Is there a way to really say this is where he is, or is he's just going to be the greatest player that's ever played at Purdue the way he's going by the time he's done?
Well, it's going to be hard to make a case against him if you just look at numbers,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Now, ultimately, he's going to be judged in the totality of his career from a winning perspective. So the most important part of his career is yet to come. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know. I mean, we don't talk about Glenn Robinson as having never gone to a Final Four, right? We don't.
like,
I guess Rick Mount didn't he?
he went to the national championship game? Yes, he did. But
Okay.
yes,
Um, but no, I mean, it's going to be hard to argue against him.
um,
What Zach Edey has done, and this might not necessarily answer your question, but he has exposed the stupidity of so many college basketball people,
I
and
love
just
that.
how people, what he has done to the collective stupidity of the court of public opinion is just astounding. How he has gotten between the ears of just so many people on social media and people actually platforming it and giving it credibility, which is, I guess, what I'm doing right now by mentioning it. But the whole everything becomes a referendum on the officiating. He's become kind of this avatar for people's loathing of officials. People saying he's not good, he's just big.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do they
Um,
watch the game? Yeah. Yeah.
they don't watch the games. They read tweets. They scan tweets, and then they just don't understand basketball whatsoever. And it started in November. Purdue played a couple SEC teams. I don't think I'm going out on a limb here by suggesting SEC people aren't exactly the most knowledgeable basketball people. Um, might go so far as to say they're not the most knowledgeable people, period. But
But you digress.
that was that was their whole story. Was Tennessee only lost to Purdue be, be, because the fix was in from the refs because of Zach Edey. And I always said that, hey, next time you have a first round NFL defensive tackle who gets held on every play but gets 5 flags all year, don't come crying to me, because that's exactly what Zach Edey is. Um, but people saying he's not a good defensive player, it's just insane. He's one of the most impactful defensive players in college basketball. He's going to be, I'd have to think he's right there for Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year right now. The three other guys who'll probably be on my Defensive Player of the Year ballot, I can't remember if I even vote, would be Ace Bailey, Cliff Amore, and Coleman Hawkins, along with Edey. And I would take Edey over any of those guys from a defensive perspective. But no, he has just, why he has become this divisive figure in college basketball is just kind of dumbfounding. He's a farm for bad takes,
Yeah. Yeah.
as which is a good problem to have sometimes, because it's what happens to you nowadays when you're really good and people are tired of watching you be really good. It's like I completely digress here, but I always make the argument that Michael Jordan's legacy would be very, very different had there been a Twitter, back then. You see Tom Brady win all these rings and Derek Jeter, and there's a segment of the population that just can't stand those guys because they're sick of watching them win.
Yeah.
They're sick of watching them be the best players. LeBron James, another great example. Um, and that's what Zach Edey's become to college basketball. He's just become this kind of binary. You're either for him or against him. You either like the Beatles or you like the Rolling Stones, And it's insane, the level of just dumb stuff that is out there about Zach Edey. And I guess he's earned it, but he's a great player. He's one of the great players in all of college basketball history. He is not a concoction of the referees. He is not only good because he's tall. I would argue that being tall is not even his biggest strength as a player. His biggest strength as a player, on top of being good at basketball for someone his size, is size. And size and height are two different things. His defining characteristic is his strength, his width, his ability to hold position, his physicality. I think I mentioned his strength already,
Yeah.
but also how nimble he is for a player that size. Height is part of it, but only part of that. And that's what has made Zach Edey great. but he's also good. He's a good basketball player. He's become a really good passer, a really good defensive player in ways that guys that big should not be good. He's the best rebounder in college basketball, if you ask me. He's an, way more active a rebounder than anybody that size should be. I'll go back to Isaac Haas. Was he a great rebounder?
No.
He was not. It's not just about being big and the ball coming to you. It's about anticipating, moving, responding to things, having quick reaction time, things like that. Um, he's just a great player, and how anybody could watch him and come up with some other take contrary to that is just absolutely mind-boggling. But also a close look into just how stupid our sports opinion culture has become. We've been first take to death, we've been barstooled to death, and everything is, everyone's overrated, everyone sucks, nothing matters. It's just he's kind of become one of the faces of that in college basketball. So
You're done. You're right. It drives me crazy. We could have four people standing on the street corner or in front of their computers with their
no,
own.
and look, I get kind of heated about that, and it's not me sticking up for Purdue. I mean,
No, nothing to do with that.
it's just objective fact. Like Purdue people made a lot of the same arguments about Trace Jackson Davis that people make about Zach Edey in terms of, oh, well, he's not going to do anything in the NBA. Like, so doesn't mean he's not a great college player. And Trace Jackson Davis is in the NBA, as Zach Edey will be next year. But like, we just kind of come up with these intellectually dishonest arguments to cut people down.
Yeah.
That's just sort of the sports culture we're in, and I'm trying to fight, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And doing a good job with it. And it's an uphill battle. In today's world, it's almost impossible.
To
But
the few thousand people who I speak to, yes.
there you go. All right, Brian. Thank you for your views and your not so hot takes, just your reasoned takes of what we're going to see not only Saturday night but also the rest of the season with Purdue basketball. So, all right, stay tuned because next segment will be Chad Q. Brown, who will talk about his business profile behavior, and a lot about what's going on in the world of Purdue sports. And then, of course, Troy Lewis will join us, and maybe even a cameo appearance by Gene Keady at the end of the show as well. So stay tuned. We'll be back in 2 minutes and for more of the show. Take care. Segment 2 with a friend of the show, and he's been on a couple times, Chad Q. Brown, profilebehavior.com. And as much as Chad is on the road and doing things and making things happen for coaches, teams, athletes around certainly in the United States and maybe even around the world, but we always have to kind of reload, Chad, and give us the elevator speech of what is profile behavior, a little bit of what you're doing, not only with Purdue, and we'll get into that later, but to just kind of give us a thumbnail of what you are up to at your day job.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, thank you, Alan. I love being here with you, man, and proud Purdue alum. And I work as a consultant to the university, and not only Purdue athletics, which we work with all sports. Been with Matt Painter and the basketball team for over 10 years now, but really have enjoyed that relationship, growing with all sports recently. But work with and advise the Purdue for Life group, the Purdue Research Foundation. Done a little work with President Chang's office, so it's awesome. I love my alma mater. We live here. My family and I live 15 minutes from campus. So, but I do our business profile is a behavioral agency. We do personality testing. But we do a lot of executive coaching, leadership training, using the behavioral assessments that we've got. Some pretty cool technology that gives these behavioral tools to kids on their phone or employees, and we really try and help teams and leaders work better together. Is the simple version on this call, but it's it's definitely a consulting firm where we advise and kind of help people see what they can't see with each other and help relationships and figure out everywhere's a different puzzle. How do you get better at the people side? And that's very subjective, but our business kind of quantifies the subjective part. So hopefully that makes sense.
It does make sense, and you have I have done one of your profiles. It is easy to do, and you've been kind to shake down what I'm all about, or what I which is not troubling at all. It just was fascinating. I love this field. I've told you this every
Yours is
time.
the best one, man. Yours is the
Yeah,
best.
that's right. That's what
Okay,
you say to everybody. But Chad also to put on his athletic background, obviously played with Purdue football, coached with Joe Tiller. Talk about just with that experience and how that got you to this, because you certainly, from the coaching world, and God knows where we are in the world of college football these days, but it's a harried experience, even back in your day of coaching. But talk about how that you got to evolve into profile behavior.
Yeah, I coached college football for 10 years. I was the young whipping boy when Joe Tiller, came on when Drew Brees actually stayed the night with me when he came onto campus. I was leaving to take a job and he was coming to campus. Like that's another story, another day. But that was the time I was here. And then I went to a little Division III school called Washington and Jefferson College. Side note, that was Matt Painter's first job as well.
All right. Tom Ryder there too.
Yeah, Tom Ryder. Yeah. We never knew each other though. I never knew those guys. And John Luckhart was the head coach, athletic director, head football coach, but he was a Purdue guy. And so he looked out for us, and in typical Purdue Nation form, they looked out for each other. They gave us an opportunity. But I went on to Dartmouth after that for a couple of years as a assistant football coach, came back to Purdue right when Brees left and during the Orton era. But I coached for 10 years. How did I get to profile behavior? I kind of got sick of moving every 2 years is the simple answer. I went into the corporate technology space. A sports tech company in Illinois was hiring coaches. I interviewed for the job. They gave me these assessments. I just had never seen them before. And I actually thought they were kind of, I was like, what is this? I'm answering questions, picking words most like me and sentences that I care about. And, it was just a unique experience. But this organization that I worked for, and it was about a $300 million technology company. They had all types of verticals. They were in IT consulting and pension software, and sports was their new vertical. That organization helped me learn that stuff, and we used it every day in hiring, but also how to develop people. And it wasn't about someone was right or wrong. It was, hey, understand these people better, communicate with these people differently than you. A lot of people. I love a quote. It's kind of our base rule in our system is you'll never see other people as they are before you see them as you are. Yeah. And if you really think about that quote, it's like, I'm wired a certain way. Well, why don't you do it the way I do it? Well, because people are different. And these assessments show that. So I thought if you could give it on a phone and give it fast, that's what was missing. And I met my business partner he and I have been together 13 years. We've grown the company. We're still a small group, but we work with a lot of cool clients, the NFL Combine, and for over 10 years, and a ton of higher education groups, whether it be athletics or fundraising or and we do a lot of corporations as well, businesses. So anyway, we just do people, but I really our technology allows us to give so many so fast. It's almost like I have this degree in behavior that I've learned because I've seen so many. And then you observe people, which developed our system of, we do a lot of executive coaching as well. How do people get better? Ed Cooley at Georgetown is a client. He told me, he said, I've learned that everybody needs a coach, and including this guy. We all need somebody we can lean on. And so there's a lot of that stuff wrapped up into profile. That's how I got there, though.
You know what, though? Purdue and Matt Painter has been much talked about, and Chad will bristle at this comment, but Purdue had a couple down years, and Matt Painter kind of turned to a guy named Chad Brown, and Matt Painter's always been a culture guy. I mean, he had Hummel, Johnson, and Etwan Moore, great guys.
Sure.
Went through a tough spell, but you came in. You certainly had something to do, but culture is an overword. I mean, sometimes overused word, but man, Purdue's and Matt Painter have been able to develop that, and just talk about that. He's really worked on getting the kind of guys that fit his program, and that is so much more of a challenge in maybe in football, but certainly in basketball too, with the transfer portal world and not having time to evaluate guys as much.
Sure.
Talk about that initial experience with Matt and how that has evolved here over the last 10 years.
No, thanks I love that word. Culture is a very overly utilized term, but we know it means something and it's a big deal. I want to say out of the gates with Matt Painter, there's this mystique that we, have helped a lot, and we have, but like people don't understand how high of an IQ that guy has.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, he is one of the most intelligent people I have ever met in my life. And he obsesses about learning, obsesses. He reads all the time, books all summer long. In our system, he's off the charts in competitiveness. So where I go is the reason that program is the way where they are is Matt Painter. End of story. Because he's so dynamic, he's learned from his mistakes too.
Yeah.
We're this little data point that he uses it correctly and he uses it for him. Like that's the people that do the best with our stuff are the people that use it for them. They figure out their own little art with it. And that's what he's done. But everywhere's a little different. So when the word culture comes up, yeah, I think you've got to strip culture down into some different silos because people say it loosely. They don't say what it means. I mean, where is your morale as an organization? Well, morale's a little subjective, so I like to use the 0 to 10 scale, 10 being perfect, 0 being the worst. Well, what would your employees say? Your culture is what they say it is. Like, think about that quote. I've always liked that. Your culture is what they say it is. You can think you're a good leader and you can think you're a good coach, but what if you took a 360 or people, really, gave you feedback, what would they actually say? And so, how's morale? How's turnover? Do people stay? You know what I mean? What level of production, an output of production do you have? And if you just went down, there's a handful of silos that to me break down culture, like those three. Use 0 to 10. And I think if you or an organization can get to that 7, 8, 9, 10, you're doing some really good things. And then you really have to drill into why. So Matt, through the years, has used our tool to really look at behaviors that have worked for him or people that are opposite of him or different than him. How can he adapt? How can he adjust when maybe he's the analytical, data-driven guy, but he's dealing with a Carson Edwards who's, extremely extroverted and fun and fast-paced, very different. But how do we make it work? Because the young man's so talented, and he uses the quote all the time. I do what's right for Purdue. That's my job. And so he's going to do everything in his power to make the people side as best as he can. And so we did an exercise this summer with the team. I had them rank their culture, and I didn't know what would come back, but from the players, it had a pretty high ranking, and I think it made Matt uncomfortable. I know it did, but that's part of my job too. I love the guy, and he's an amazing individual. But when I saw those kids talk about, you think about the NIL world today, our guys could go anywhere. We got 10 starters. We don't have 5 starters. Yeah. So they could go anywhere and they could get paid a lot of money. And we take care of them, don't get me wrong, but they stay. That says a lot.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Without divulging specifics maybe, but talk about, you've got, I've talked about certain guys in this team. Zach Edey is very seems to me to be very consistent.
Yes, he is.
That may be the biggest understatement of all. You've got a Fletcher Lawyer, you've got a Mason Kilson, they're all different personalities, but as a unit, they seem to meld well together. But as you compare them to some other teams, is that in fact reality? I mean, obviously, what they're doing on the court speaks for itself. We get that, but just from that personalities of guys, do they have that right amount of competitiveness, maybe even nastiness to do what they need to do? In your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's the most coachable team that I've ever seen have. I think that's the biggest. He's such he's so good with the details. And we have clients in men's basketballs might be half of our revenue, as far as our company goes. So we, Mike White at Georgia or Porter Moser at Oklahoma or Micah Shrewsbury at Notre Dame, Ed Cooley at Georgetown. These are all clients of ours. And in the summertime, I've asked I do a lot of programming, and I've asked those guys, who's the best X and O guy that you're around? And I actually am not teeing it up for them to say Matt.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Like Porter Moser, Oklahoma, actually, came from Loyola to there. He gets a lot of praise with that. But Matt's always in the top five. They all
Yeah.
know how great he is. But you need these detail-oriented personalities, behavioral styles. So they're off the charts in competitiveness, high coachability. They're detailed. None of them are perfect. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're a tool, right? There's more to people. Like the way someone, Alan, where you grew up and how you were raised and the nurturing you got. There's nature and there's nurture. That stuff matters, and that's not in an assessment. So you have to look at this formula of people. But he's done an awesome job of filling holes too. Like Jenkins last year was a really good puzzle piece. But then Lance Jones has turned out to be even another
Level. Yeah.
another level up. So he's done a really good job filling in those holes. And the kids are just really coachable. They're really competitive. And I mean, you mentioned with Zach, they all have a level of consistency to them. They all have their nuances, but there is that baseline that really fits Matt. They're good kids. They want to be here. They want to be at Purdue. They want an education. And I may shoot myself in the foot when I say this, but I've told people nationally, like Purdue is one of the few teams that's built not to transfer.
Yeah.
Like, think about that. Like I go, like there's a team we work with in the SEC. I won't say who it is. I mean, there's 9 new dudes there.
Yeah.
Last year. Big 12, 9 new people, 5 new people. Like I'm not saying people don't transfer from Purdue, but it's less. Does that make sense? And that's by design. But Matt will never say that. And Matt, he's just too humble. He believes in his people. But we have good people at Purdue, and there's just so many awesome things that Purdue for Life and John Purdue Club and all these places, they do so much in the fundraising side, and obviously the donors and the alums. They give Purdue this back end ability to do so many things because the financial support is unreal at Purdue.
Man, yeah, this could be a 2-hour show if you and I were allowed to do that. But it's the perfect segue into what you are doing in the Forging Ahead campaign. This is, and tying even more, the athletic department, John Purdue Club has identified that. It's an interesting storyline. You talk to Tim House, who's the head of the John Purdue Club and one of the executive associate athletic directors. You talk about that need for retention, because to me, in the crazy world of the transfer portal, anybody can go anywhere. It seems to me Purdue's goal is to try to make it so kids don't leave, not just in men's basketball, but everywhere, because it's a great environment. But talk about that campaign and your role in that, and maybe how you get from point A to point B to so that all programs are in that as much in that situation as they can be.
Yeah, I mean, when Michael Binsky got here, I forget how many years ago,
2016, yep.
2016, I met with him, and Matt put me in front of him right away and said, "This is what we do." And Mike was great, and he was like, the sports can choose to work with you. I'm not that type of, I'm going to let our sports use tools they want to use. He's a great leader. He's so strategic. He's so political. I'll even call him powerful. Like the guy knows, he's so tied into what we want at Purdue, right? But after a while, I think they, 4 or 5 years into this thing, into his tenure, they sat around and said, how can we continue to gain a competitive advantage? And you can invest, you can go raise money, you can do training tables, you can do facilities, you can do all these things people have done for 100 years to move the needle. Oregon makes the huge initiative of facilities and fingerprint locker rooms and iPads, and everybody's trying to gain an edge, right? And so, Tim House, I mean, I want to give him credit. I think he sat around the table with those guys and said, how can we get better on the people side? He said, Matt's been using the profile tools for a while, and Chad's an alum, and, how can our other sports? And they came to me and said, we have this idea to, kind of put you front and center, start working with all sports, show our alumni and the university how creative and innovative we're going to be. They know it's not going to, flip a switch tomorrow and all of a sudden we're winning national titles every, in every sport, because it takes time to get the right people, use the tool in recruiting. Every coach has to kind of figure out their way of using it.
Yeah.
Where Tony Ursland at wrestling is doing an unbelievable job, and Coach Goff with baseball, we had a program with them last night. He's doing an awesome job. Both golf teams are all in, and they've been using it. And everywhere's a different puzzle, but they are all trying to become more scientific with their people. That's where I want to give them a lot of credit, and that's all from Mike and Tim, and then the senior administration there have been super supportive. Ken Halpin and all the guys, all the team that works with Mike every day, just been awesome. And so it's a lot of work, but they're really kicking it off. And so the last thing I'll say is they're letting the alum know. They're letting the people that support Purdue is we are trying to be different. We need you to get behind us. And so for clarity, that money goes to Purdue. We have our fees and so on, but that money goes to Purdue to help, with all the things that, Purdue needs with, their facilities and with infrastructure and things of that nature. So that was their vision. We love and are really proud to be a part of it. It's fun because it's my alma mater, man. I'm really proud. There's nobody I want to see succeed more.
You had an coaching experience in Dartmouth, the Big Green. And yet they're now kind of the focal point of the current craziness or change. I don't know if it's just that I'm a little bit older and maybe I need to adjust more. But talk about not only the Dartmouth decision, but just its role and the psyche of student athletes and what we've talked about retention. We've talked about NIL and quote unquote pay for play, but how do coaches and teams deal with that and maybe even use your tool to figure out, all right, these are guys that may stick with us or these guys are motivated by certain things. And then lastly, Chad, where the heck do you see all this going?
Well, I mean, just let's cut to it. No matter how you feel about this world, ladies and gentlemen, we are in pay for play.
Yeah.
End of story. From here forward, we are in pay for play. And so in some way, shape, or form, if you don't want to get on that train, you will be left behind. People already have been. There were athletic directors that it's going to go away. It's going to change. No way it sustains. All due respect, it's not. If you can go onto YouTube and watch the Senate hearing, that was a 2-hour hearing where the panel was Charlie Baker, the head of the NCAA. You had Jack Swarbrick, the former AD at Notre Dame. You had the athletic director at St. Joseph's. You had the head of the athletic union was there. There was a gentleman, I forget his name. He's the head of one of the biggest collectives. He actually oversees Ole Miss's collective, but there's 25 other schools there. There was a student athlete on the panel. The new Big Ten commissioner was on that panel. So that's who's sitting in front of our nation's leaders, and they're talking about trying to, figure out how to put this all and get some structure around it. Because, like, for example, the state of Missouri, they passed a law where you can pay high school kids. So as long as you're going to go to a school in state, we can pay you in high school. Nobody else is doing that. So there's no uniformity with each state. That's an example. So what Dartmouth did is, and this is the way I see it. It's an opinion. I worked there for a couple of years, but it's not about Dartmouth. It's about the Ivy League. When the Ivy League's always been, we're going to be first. We're going to look at the student athlete. It's academics first. I actually don't know if what they did is a trigger to tell the rest of the nation to do it. I just, when COVID hit, the Ivy League shut down first. They've just always been that way. And so I just believe that they're trying to be proactive in that area. They've always, you know what I mean, and give them credit. But this committee, these oversight committees that where the Big Ten and the SEC have just come together, that's what's going to happen. And they're going to, I know enough to be dangerous for the next year. They're going to sit back and they're going to look back, and all the smart people are going to get in the room. And if there's no needle moved from the NCAA on uniformity or from, the government, my prediction is the Big Ten and the SEC are going to turn into the AFC and the NFC, and they're going to do their thing. I don't have proof of that. I know enough, talk to enough people that's where it's going. But do you remember the YouTube video? It was just a clip. It was an interview with Chip Kelly at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
He
Right.
kind of came out. He's like, we got a lot of smart people out there. Why can't we get them all in the room and figure out a solution? In my opinion, I think that video that went viral, kicked everybody in the butt,
Yeah.
and they just did it. So there's more to come, but that's what I think. What Dartmouth did is proactive. I just don't know if that's what's going to happen because there's too much Wild West still. There's too much Wild West.
Really interesting insight. I really hadn't thought about that. That yes, the Ivy League has chosen to be first. They really don't. I don't say that they don't care what everybody else does, but they do care what they do.
Oh yeah,
really, really good. All right, the event of the year. You thought I was going to mention Purdue, Indiana on Saturday night. Now that is the event of the year, Matt.
it will be fun.
But the other event of the year is Sunday in the Super Bowl, and again, I know you've worked with a lot of these guys, and this is not a gambling show, but just talk about a Patrick Mahomes, who I think you've had some, and also I don't know whether you have with Brock Purdy, but talk about what you see, not only just from the game, but these are two phenomenal organizations first and foremost. And probably put on a heck of a show on Sunday night after Purdue fans. Hopefully, if you're a Purdue fan, you can be in the glow of a win over Indiana. But talk about just that, and working with an NFL type guy and that type of person. Mahomes, again, an unbelievable personality, but also kind of delivers on the field too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're really excited for the people in Bloomington to come up this Saturday. Let me start with that.
Welcome them with open arms.
We're gonna welcome them. Come on up. We got something for you. But on the Super Bowl, I appreciate you asking. Patrick Mahomes is in our system, and so is Brock Purdy and a lot of those guys, and Keena Turner, who oversees operations for the 49ers, is a friend, but great player here at Purdue. He was proactive with us probably 8-9 years ago. So I know enough about that organization. They do a lot of great things, developing people. Mahomes is just physically talented. Like that's the thing that take the personality, all these things out the window. Like there's Sean Payton has told stories where they went to watch him work out. And Sean Payton, this is the Bill Parcells disciple, had never seen anybody throw the ball, and contort his body like that guy. And and he's obviously been to multiple Super Bowls. He's just, one of those unique talents that's hard to go against, right?
Yeah.
But what both organizations have done, John Lynch, he started 4 or 5 years ago as the general manager of the Niners, and they built it from the draft. I mean, if you watch how they built it from the draft, like people talk about doing. Not everybody stays with it, but he did. And then it's amazing. I think quarterback stories are amazing because too many, like Brock Purdy, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, these guys have come from fourth round or below, and through a lot of grit and work and competitiveness and love of the game like that. Just not trying to sound like a self-help book, but they succeed. And Garoppolo leaving and all these different things have to happen for Purdy to be there, but all he does is continue to win. So it's really going to be an awesome game. I probably lean Kansas City a little bit just because of the quarterback and because of Andy Reid, but it'll be a good game. They're both so well run. And Kyle Shanahan, what I think he does is amazing. And I'll be honest with you, I think Purdue University, we only had 1 year under Ryan, but Graham Harrell, when I watch Graham Harrell run our offense, he is so creative in how he runs the football. And, I know we still need some more horses, and, some of you Purdue fans may be frustrated a little bit with the results, but he is unbelievable with how he runs the football. But Shanahan does it the best in the NFL, and just being creative on how to rush the football. And I think that's where they're really elite. So it's going to be an awesome game. If you're making me answer, I'm leaning to the Chiefs by 3. So we'll see.
I can't bet again, and I'm not betting. But if I was, I can't bet against Mahomes.
I didn't say that word.
He is. He's pretty special, but so Brock Purdy's an unbelievable story.
Yeah.
Purdue fans will be watching George Karlaftis as well,
Oh, yeah.
and he will be he is trending in the not this year, maybe not next year, but he's going to be an elite level player in this league. He's showing that as well. Every time you get on this show, I have 47 more questions I want to ask. That we will say that because we didn't talk about Ryan Walters in football. We'll do that again if Chad's good enough to join us in the fall. Just a little bit about where Ryan's program is. A lot of work to be done there, but a guy that I think is working hard to try to get it done. So, Chad, thanks so much for your time. I'm just soaking it all in for all. And we said 18 minutes, and you went 25, so we appreciate that very much. So, it's great stuff and interesting stuff, and this story will continue to be told. We're always grateful that you will spend time with us a couple times a year with us on our show. So, all right, we'll be back in a couple minutes. I think we're going to have Gene Keady and Troy Lewis will join us too. Will be a lot of fun. Gene Keady will be in the. If you need any more excitement in Mackey Arena on Saturday night, Gene Keady will be there. Troy Lewis will be there. It will be a magical evening, especially if the Boilermakers can take care of business. So we'll be back in a couple of minutes on Gold and Black Live. Special guest, Troy Lewis, who he's moved mountains to be with us. Not really, he's just always gracious with his time. Coaching high school basketball for the Centerville Elks.
The Elks, yeah.
I looked that up on that thing called the World Wide Web. That was cool. And you're making a difference in kids' lives on a daily basis, in addition to having a pretty challenging day job. But and heading up on Friday to northern Indiana to La Lumiere, and then you're going to come down I-65. And I think you've had some great days in Mackey Arena, but this is going to be, it may not be your best, but it's the fact that it's a bobblehead, it's IU, and you might even get a chance to give another rousing speech at halftime. It's going to be an awesome weekend for you.
Yeah, I look forward to it. When I got that phone call saying I was going to have a bobblehead, I was really kind of thrown back a little bit. I was like, wow, it's not quite like the jersey, but it is pretty special though.
It is pretty. Have you seen it? And does it look enough like you that you're happy? Have you seen it?
I've seen it, and I was a little surprised. They said I had a mustache. They got me with a mustache, a thin mustache. So I was like, I had a thin one, I guess, when I was in college. So that's they said that's where they got the picture from. So
I'm sure I'm
not going to complain.
No, it's an awesome thing, and they'll be gone. Let's see, the game's at 8, the doors open at 6:30, and they'll be gone at about 6:35. So make sure.
Oh, well, see, I'm glad you said that because I didn't think the fans could get in until 7, but
it may be 7. I think it's whatever the doors are open, they're gone in a hurry, and they'll be lining up, and for all of them. And I know that the ones they've done in the past, and it may be 7 o'clock. I need to give.
Oh, I could be wrong. Don't know.
But whatever the case is, you don't need advice on things like this. Get your stash, all right, before you go. Make sure they take care of you.
Well, they said they will. So
they're going to take care of you.
That's the first thing I asked. I said, how many will I get? And they said, well, we got you. So,
all right, I have to ask you, because you are in rarefied air, so to speak, in Purdue basketball history as a 2,000-point scorer. What crossed your mind when number 15 passed you? And I know you, at least Troy, I remember, had attention to you were always aware of numbers and things like that. But what did you even know he passed you? And yet it still is an amazing thing to be a 2,000-point scorer at college level.
He's such a great player. I mean, it's not a surprise that he's gotten over 2,000 points. I know there was a particular game. One of my brother texted me and said, "Hey, they got you on the list here. I guess Zach is on your back." I say, "Hey, they can never take that away from me." So no matter what happens, it's my number always going to be my number. So, but I'm always happy. I don't get caught up. Like, oh no. Hey, the more the merrier. Like I said, I had my time playing at Purdue, and I wouldn't change it for a minute.
That time, 1985 to 88, and one of the great recruiting classes, really a class. I know Purdue won the Big Ten championship in '84, but that Troy, Todd, and Everett And Jeff Arnold and Dave Stack, I believe, are also in your
Yep.
class. But I remember Dick Vitale all throughout the 1984 season talking about these guys. They could do that back then. They talk about Troy Todd Everett coming to Purdue, and you didn't disappoint. But that road was an exciting one. You look now, and as you coach kids now, and you've played a lot of basketball, even after your days at Purdue. Is there a way to encapsulate what that takeaway is from that experience at Purdue, which was so successful, two back-to-back Big Ten championships on down the line? What was that takeaway for you?
Just great memories. The confidence that I had with my teammates, the coaching staff, obviously with Coach Keady leading the way, the confidence that we had going out and playing every game, preparation. I tried to relate that to the kids now, just saying, hey, just listen, look at your scouting report, and just go out there and play to win the game. I said everything else would take care of itself. And that was so special about our team. We really didn't care, Todd, Everett, who scored or who did what. At the end of the day, when you got on that bus from Illinois, from Michigan or Wisconsin, whatever, and you're flying home, you're feeling good about yourself, not because you scored any points, but because you won the game.
Well, you think about the culture, and it's a used word and kind of a theme of today's show with the earlier guest with Chad Q. Brown and others. You had great culture. I mean, you had kids, you had guys, teammates that wanted to make it happen. And even in your junior and senior years, even with Tony Jones coming off the bench, Steven Scheffler coming off the bench, all tough guys that wanted to make it happen. And even guys, Mel McCants in the middle, Kip Jones. This was a very, very good basketball team from top to bottom. You even look at your sophomore year, 80, 85, 86 with Doug Lee in the year that you started to see what you could be. Was there a turning point there where you thought, we are going to be really something special by the time my junior and senior? I mean, you made the NCAA and were very good in 86 as well. But was there a turning point moment for you as you recall looking back at your time?
I think really the turning point was my freshman year. To be honest with you, I remember Coach Keady had us playing against the veteran guys. That's when we used to be able to go on the road and play in towns. We had squad games, and you played at other high schools and stuff. And I remember one time he had us, all of us freshmen, playing together against Bullock and Atkinson and Reed and those guys. They just won the Big Ten. So I think the coaches thought we were going to get our butts kicked in the first half. I mean, we hung with them. I think we were down 1 point, and we're at halftime going like, okay. And they came out in the second half, just put on a notch and just kicked our butts. But I felt at that time, I was like, okay. I said, my boys, we can play. I said, we can play. I said, we can stay with these guys who just won the Big Ten last year. We got a chance. And I think after our freshman year, going into our sophomore year, I think, like I talked about, our confidence going into our sophomore year, we felt like we could be good. Now, as far as, trying to win the Big Ten championship, we knew it was going to be tough because of Michigan was pretty low that year.
A guy named Roy Tarpley wasn't too bad those years, and others there. You played a loaded Big Ten for 4 years. From that standpoint, was good. The thing that was interesting, I think, about your teams, that they were just great, and a similarity to this year's team, from what I know of Matt Painter's team, good dudes. And now that doesn't mean you weren't competitive and nasty with one another from time to time, or had to be. But man, you guys are, Mel McCants, you can't find a nicer guy, but he had an edge to him. Troy Lewis had an edge to him. And Todd Mitchell definitely did. Talk about that, of being guys that, a lot of times you had smiles on your faces, you played hard, but that competitive fire there was there all the way through your entire career in those teams.
It actually starts in practice. I mean, you can tell by going through drills and stuff how everybody was so competitive. I mean, there fights,
ball throwing
balls at each other and
things
like that. But off the court, but once that was done, the thing we had that no one took it personal. It was never like, oh man, I'm never going to talk to that guy again. And after we just hugged like no one is more competitive as Tony Jones. I mean, I know
Yeah.
here. I mean, he had this, but you know what? Coach Keady was like that. Coach, we used to Coach used to play horse with the assistant coaches before practice. We'll be stretching, and when he lose, he would kick the ball up in the
Oh
stands.
yeah.
And we'd be like, oh man, we tell assistant coaches, come on, you gotta let him win, or practice is gonna be hell for us. But we saw that competitiveness from him, and it's just, our practice was like that. But like I said, once we walked off the court, man, we're in the locker room laughing, cracking on each other and things like that, giving each other rides back to our dorm or back to our apartments. And I think that's what made us such a great team.
Yeah, Troy Lewis had that beautiful jumper with the hand high. Gene Keady was right in front of him, and he's pushing that baby up
Yeah.
there. I can
I
still see.
wasn't gonna emulate his shot. I can tell you that.
Yeah, no, no, I think not. But yes, competitive, and that was part of it. What will it mean to you? I mean, obviously the bobblehead, and maybe a chance to address a Mackey Arena crowd. Maybe Purdue will be up a few points if you're doing it at the half. Gene Keady will be there as well, and a man that again, he competitive. Probably at times after practice, you were not in love with him, but you did appreciate him, and certainly maybe as the years go on, you appreciate him more. But what does it mean? The Purdue Indiana game is this most special night of the year, to be honest, in Mackey Arena. It always has been when Bob Knight and Gene Keady were going. But what does it mean to share another one of those nights? And it's going to be 8 o'clock. You're going to be all primed for that one. What's it going to mean to you to have the coach in the house, so to speak? That's going to be
It always means a lot getting a chance to see Coach. The influence he had in my life, not just me personally, but with my family. He always treated my mom well once after I even left school. So to be able to share this with him it's special. I wish my cohorts could be with me too, my brothers and from another mother, Todd and Everett, but they got previous engagements. But yeah, it's always special, especially against Indiana. Place is going to be rocking. The paint crew is. I kind of wish we had something like that when we were
yeah.
in school. But Mackey was rocking too. I always tell people like one of the loudest time is my freshman year when we got down 8 and we made a run against Indiana in the second half and I like hit 3 baskets, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is really really different uh, than it playing any other school in the Big Ten or any other opponent." But yeah, it's always special when you
Yeah,
play,
I remember that game.
especially back then with Bobby Knight.
Yeah, I was gonna say that freshman year you were down. I think Marty Simmons was playing, and
Yeah,
you made on a run in the second half and got him. 86, you just kicked the crap out of him. I mean, it was like a game where you couldn't make any mistakes and they couldn't do anything, and you beat them badly, as I recall. Winning in Assembly Hall, which you did once, boy, in '86 you had him in the last minute and didn't you had him way down in '88, came all the way back and in
that's
J Edwards and the Viper, as Gene Keady would have called him, I think. But talk about just that rivalry and the specialness of playing in both facilities, because even as a player, there's Assembly Hall has got to get your juices going just because of that atmosphere there, just like it does in Mackey.
yeah, it does. I mean, the other thing about it is me being from Indiana, I had
Yeah.
a lot of friends that
Oh yeah.
went to IU. So classmates or people I went to school with or alumni back in my hometown. I know Stu Robinson, playing against Stu Robinson, he was from Anderson. Winston Morgan was from Anderson. I knew Ray Talbert. They're all those guys are from Anderson. So it always added that special deal with me to try to win down there. But it was always tough. We knew no matter what our record was, playing in Assembly Hall it was tough. Especially you got a coach like Bobby Knight. That's their preparation and also their culture too is you knew you had to come ready to play, and it didn't matter how good you were or how bad you were. Those games were going to be tight and rough and tough, and And we only got out of there with one victory out of the 4 years I played. I do get a lot of questions about what game that, or moment. And I was in the game with the chair throwing
Yes,
thing
you
game,
were.
but that's not my biggest memory. My biggest memory is I threw the ball away our senior year. I think we were up one, and we were taking it out underneath our goal. And I just threw this lazy pass because we've run this play underneath all the time, and
Yeah.
I've always threw it in, and I just nonchalanted it just a little bit, and Jay Edwards tipped it, and they got a steal, and they end up going down there and scoring.
Yeah.
And to this day, I always hate that because we were, like you mentioned earlier, that we were down.
You're down like 18 or 19 right
Yeah,
there.
we even got down 21 because
21, that's right. That's right.
they came out and scored at the beginning of the half, and we came all the way back, and I throw a nonchalant pass, and I tell people that's what I remember the most
It's
of
funny because
all the 8 games, really, of all the 8 games.
I think
That's what bothered me the most.
I think the interesting thing is the competitors at your level, and I cannot relate to it, but they do. You all have it. It's always the losses that you remember. And it's not a negative way of living. It's just the way, it's because you're competitive. Yeah, that was the famous Gene Keady call, and he may have never said it to you guys. He said it. I can remember him talking about the Viper, which was Jay Edwards. He came in like a Viper, took the ball, and whatever. That would have been the biggest comeback in Purdue basketball history. Of course, Jim Rowinski sadly passed away this
I
week.
heard.
That get win at Illinois when you were a junior in high
Mhm.
school was the greatest comeback. Boilermakers were down, I think, 20 in that one. But yeah, I have to ask you too, the games in Mackey in 87 and 88 with Indiana. 87, they beat you 11 down there. You
Yep.
beat them 11 here, but just classic games, of course. And then in 88, they bring the lights in at CBS, and that was
Yeah.
Gene Edwards' freshman year, I believe. And you beat them. You beat them. Tough game, but you beat them in Mackey. But just that complete aura of Bob Knight, Gene Keady, the second that those two got together, and again because you're playing against friends, guys, made that an unbelievable environment.
Yeah, because actually that game in '88, because we lost that one because we played down Bloomington the first game,
I believe that's right.
and so when we had the second game, I told Coach Keady, I said the first place for me.
Yeah.
So we're running this first play for me, and I'm shooting the first shot. I am shooting this first shot, because I want to kind of avenge what I did down there in Bloomington, and so I hit the first shot, and I remember Joe Hillman was guarding me,
Bill Hillman, yeah, great
and
player.
I said, y'all ain't bleeping winning tonight.
It's interesting. There's a book that we've had Ed Snyder on that you're a part of their times in Indiana. And I don't know if you've had a chance to look through it yet. Great stories. And about Troy Lewis is in there. You wrote it in your own words. Ray Talbert's in there. Just growing up in Anderson and playing basketball, and how you guys, that's the common thread through the book is persistence, working by yourself to become better as you grew up, and the smell of popcorn and gyms. I think that's the other thing that everybody talks about. But talk about that, that the childhood, that there were challenges always in childhood, and I'm sure for you as well. But that ability to have that kind of talent in your town, not only at your school, but at Madison Heights, at Highland at that time. Unreal. That kind of maybe fine-tuned you and your brothers, for guys' sakes. I mean, you had enough talent under the same house to keep you to make you the player that you were.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to have two older brothers, Kendrick and Scotty, that pushed me, and but they also nurtured me to where they would take me to, to the book with them, even though I wasn't as big as them and things. But they would, always make sure I at least got on the court every now and then. But yeah, growing up in Anderson, I mean, it was, they called New York, messing the Mecca, but in my mind, that little world, I thought Anderson was the Mecca of high school basketball because of the wigwam.
And it was. It
Yeah.
was. Sports Illustrated wrote about it. It was.
Yeah, and it was real fortunate because, we moved around a lot, and then
Yeah.
we ended up living with my grandparents, and their house was like we can step off the porch and we can see the wigwam.
Yeah.
So I used to imagine as a kid, I would just we had the game on the radio, and I would walk outside and look at the building. And I always said, I'm going to play in there one day. And my mom used to take us to the games and stuff. And I know in the book I talked about how the first time, I wanted to be Roy Taylor, and they we get to the game, the crazy story. We get to the game, and I'm sitting there looking for 43 and I was like, man, that doesn't look like Roy Taylor. The next thing you know, the game's over, and I'm like, we just got here. How's the game's over? The next thing you know, boom, all the pageantry, the guys coming out big and stuff. I'm like, oh, I was like, my mom said,
JV
it's
game.
the JV game. That's when I saw Roy for the first time live. I was like, oh, here's Roy. So yeah.
I love this story because the jersey you wanted to be was 43, right? And then you
Yes.
changed that, and you'll have to get the book. It is a great book. But what was interesting too, and Purdue people should not I did not take offense to it because I think your last paragraph, you said, I'm an Anderson Indian. You're a Purdue Boilermaker too. I know that, but it's just that ability, and even telling the story about, we couldn't afford always to go to the game, so sometimes we didn't. We listened to the game on radio growing up, but it was a huge deal to be there, and that is a great tribute to not only your family but your persistence to be the player that you are. All right, I got to ask you now about put Troy Lewis on this Purdue basketball team, and I'm sure you've been able to at least watch a little bit of the Boilermakers. That big guy in the middle is pretty good. This is a pretty good basketball team. I mean, they've got all the pieces there, and you guys did too in '88. But talk about this group from what you see and what you like, and who you would have played well with in this lineup.
Well, what I like about the team this year, I mean, they're unselfish and they're a year older. I mean, it makes a huge difference. Like I talked about from our freshman year to a sophomore year, the confidence that we had as sophomores, and they have the same thing now, especially with Edey coming back now. They got a guy that they're all proven that they can play on that level. I think last year, they got a lot of the hype. They were good and they were number one seed and could have been, I don't know, not in their locker room, not in their practice, but you never know. It could have been too much. But now I know for sure that they're focused. They know what it takes. Matt's done a great job. They know the system. They know to get it into Zach. But yeah, this group here, I really enjoy watching them play. I mean, Brandon Smith has taken a big step forward. I think that's the main key why they're having so much success this year. He's playing with so much confidence, shooting the ball, rebounding. As far as me playing, if I was, I mean,
You get them open looks. You get some open looks.
Oh my goodness, yeah, that'd have been interesting, but I wouldn't trade Big Mel for nobody.
No,
Though.
I love Mel. God, Mel was really good, but
he's Zach Keady. Don't get me wrong now, but
Yeah.
Big Mel was that's
Big
my
Mel
guy.
was only 6'9".
Yeah,
So
he was only
he's just
6'9", but
and
he
but
played his butt off though, man. He will battle and fight to the very end, man. Yeah, he was.
and he had a little edge to him too.
Yeah,
You
he
can
came
ask.
from
I can't
Chicago.
think
He
of
got that Chicago.
The guy from Northeastern when they got into it a little bit.
Yeah.
I need to think of his name, but Mel reminded people that he meant business. I love
Mel used to carry around. He was from Chicago, South Side Chicago, so he had that little toughness with him.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that. Well, it will be thrilling for Purdue fans to have you in Mackey Arena, and a very special night for you. Safe travels because you'll be making it down. I got to ask you one last question about how are the Centerville Elks this year, and how you've done this now. You said for 4 years as an assistant coach. What got you back into it? You said talking about the kids, but it's been a fun experience, I assume, to be able to do that.
Yeah, well, I was coaching for Springboro High School for a while, and then the head coach ended up resigning, and then COVID hit, and so the head coach, well, one of the coaches that's coached at Springboro knew the head coach here at Centerville, and he kind of recommended me to have me on his staff, and then I watched them play. They're in our conference when I was at Springboro, so I knew about them, and I always from a distance, watched them play and how hard they play, how disciplined they were, and you can tell there was something different about this program. So when he wanted me to be on staff, I couldn't turn it down, and it's been the best 4 years as far as coaching high school basketball, because he really does the things the right way. He tries to prepare the kids for college, for life, and that's what I'm all about. Everything is, nowadays is the instant gratification because of all the social media things, which it's fine. I mean, every generation has their thing, and it's always going to be that way. So, but there at the end of the day, you have to be respectful and love the game and treat people the right way.
Wendy's hamburger certificates did not replace NIL, which you guys had those things in those days, but it wasn't quite the same as it is now.
I'm happy for the kids too. I mean,
oh yeah, you have to be enlightened. Man. It's their time.
I wish I would have had it, but hey.
All right. Well, like I said, we'll look forward to watching you on Saturday night in Mac.
I'm looking forward to it.
It'll be a special night no matter. One last question. Your day job, you've been doing it for quite a while, but what keeps you busy on a daily basis?
I'm with Victory Wholesale Grocers, been with the company now for 30 years.
That's great.
So it's a great company, family-owned company. Still going strong, and the best part is I'm working from home ever since COVID, and that's the best part.
Okay with you?
That's fine with me. I don't have to go in that office, but it's.
And you do what do you do? Brokerage work? What's your
not brokerage. I'm in the procurement department, which Kroger is my biggest account, so I deal with those guys every day, and it keeps me on my toes, keep my day busy, and then I go to practice at 3:00, hang out with the kids. They keep me young. And so, life is good. I can't complain. And, hopefully Saturday night, boys will come through with a big victory to make my night special. Even more special.
It will be special. That sunny disposition that you've always had plays well in the business world. It plays well in the coaching world.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Troy. And I want to say thank you to State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com and XXX on the hill, but on the level since 1929, a tradition. I don't know that they ought to name a sandwich after Troy.
Yeah, I would love a sandwich there at XXX after me.
We'll work on Kerry and Greg on that one, and we'll do that too. Have a great trip down here and safe travels, and we'll look forward to.
Before you go, I know a good sandwich they will have. They can have a triple meat there. They don't already have it called the Three Amigos. That'd be a great sandwich.
You know what? We have some connections, and we could connect. I think that would be perfect, and you guys would be such good ambassadors to come in and do it. That'd be a good sandwich. You're a marketing guy. That's what I like.
I'm in the business now.
There you go. All right, have a great one. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Alan. Okay, take care. Okay, bye.
Segment 3A, I guess you'd call this, but I would hate to put Gene Keady in that category. This is the pinnacle of the show to have the coach on with us, Golden Black Live, and our Saturday simulcast. But, Coach, you're going to get a chance to make your way up from Indianapolis for Saturday night's game against Indiana, a team you're well familiar with. What do you think when you come back into Mackey Arena each time? I mean, it's going to be special for the fans. I'm sure it's special for you.
Oh, yeah. I always think I was so lucky to have the best crowd in the nation a lot of times per capita that it was just unbelievable that they'd come out for all the games like they did.
Your good friend Bob Knight passed away this year, but there are a lot of memories, great memories of those games over the years in Mackey Arena. It was the highlight of the season. Talk about that and just that great competition that the two of you had and you had when you played Indiana every time.
Well, Eddie Sutton had brought me back with him one time to meet Bobby. when I was assistant coach at Arkansas, and then that's how I got into really knowing him pretty well. And then after that, it was just kind of after I got the Purdue job, it was like, wow, this guy is unbelievable to be around because he was so intellectual in his thinking about certain things that it was a privilege for me to even be in the same league with him.
Yeah, and you were in that league. You beat him more times than he beat you.
Well, I didn't remember that, but that's
okay. That's left up for us statisticians that worry about stuff like that. All right, Troy.
We tried to win every game, but I didn't know. I didn't know, but that was the case with that game.
Troy Lewis also will be there tomorrow and Saturday night and being honored as well. And a special guy for you and Troy, Todd, and Everett in the mid 1980s really were terrific guys to coach. Yeah, talk about Troy.
Well, Troy was a guy that was easy to coach because he listened. He was intelligent, and he was a very, very good player and a great shooter. So that's a hard combo to beat.
Yeah, he was absolutely that, and he also an Indiana guy, being from Anderson. And his mother was a big deal he said in the earlier interview how much you meant to his mother, and you got along, and it was a great combination. But talk about that and also the families. And when you recruit guys, you recruit the families a lot, and that had a lot to do with your success.
Well, when I went into a interview with the families, it was like talking to my family because they were always so cordial and interested in the kids getting their education. That was one thing I always try to really sell, that if you come to Purdue, you're going to have to go to class. So we want you to get your degree while you're here. So that was my biggest selling point, because the fact that he was a great player didn't mean as much as his degree would.
Yeah. All right. When you come to Mackey Arena and Lily, your friend Lily Sendek takes good care of you and you and Kathleen come there. Well, what's it like for us that can't relate? What's it like to be a rock star when you walk in? I mean, the place is going to go bananas when you're there tomorrow on Saturday night. Do you love? I mean, even after it's been a while since you coached here at Purdue, but people love you as much as they ever did.
Well, I think the main thing is I want Matt to beat Indiana, because it was a huge thing in our portfolio that if you could beat Indiana, you're probably going to be pretty good that year.
Yeah. Well said. All right, Zach Edey. You coached some good centers in your time, but Zach Edey is about as good as it gets. Matt's got a really good team this year, as you know. A lot of balance, a lot of things that can make them successful. But have you ever seen a player quite like Zach Edey?
No, I've never had a guy with 7'4". Plus, he's pretty darn smart, so that makes it doubly pleasurable to be able to coach a kid like that. So he's not a kid; he's a man. But sometimes you slip and say kid.
Yeah, he is something else, and you would love, and you've, I'm sure, heard from Coach Matt Painter the same thing. That he is an extremely hard worker. He works hard at his craft, and I know that you see that when you watch him play. He's just been terrific from that standpoint. All right, now how long do you know what your plans are? Are you going to be around for a little bit of time? What's your plans after the game? Do you know?
Kind of up to my wife. It mainly seeing the Indiana game, and then we'll get home and take care of our pup, and have our neighbors are great, so we have a good neighborhood we live in, so it's fun to be in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, no doubt. And the weather's a little bit warmer this time of year, but you will bring a lot of warmth to Mackey Arena tomorrow night. It's always special when Purdue and Indiana play, and when Gene Keady's in the house. When you have the court named after you, that's even extra special when you play Indiana. And I think that's going to be a very, very fun night for you and for everybody that's for Kathleen, for Lily, on down the line. It's going to be a very special night for you tomorrow night.
I hope so. If we beat them, it'll be really special. So that's one of those things you never know until you play the game. So we'll see. But I appreciate your comments.
All right, we'll see as well. It's going to be always Purdue, Indiana is always interesting. Purdue beat them by 21 the first time around. It may not be that easy this time, Coach. It doesn't seem to always work that way, does it?
No, it doesn't. You don't count on anything like that again. So that was very unusual to be able to do it at their place.
Yeah, no doubt. And you had some success down there. Well, Coach, thanks so much for your time. We really enjoyed you taking the time. And again, thanks to Dear Lily for also setting this up. You're a great Zoomer. That's what makes it a lot of fun. But thanks again to our sponsor, the Purdue Union Club Hotel, Boiler Up Bar, 811 Bistro, and Leaps Coffee. We appreciate them very much. We also thank our guests, Brian Newbert and Chad Q. Brown, Troy Lewis, and Gene Keady for a great show today. And a reminder that you can subscribe to us on YouTube, or better yet, you can subscribe to us at goldenblack.com, the website for Purdue information, certainly on football and basketball, our message boards, Knucklehead Central. If you're a Purdue fan, you ought to consider becoming a subscriber. It is the place to be for the Purdue sports fans. So anyway, have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week in our next edition of Saturday Simulcast.